It was early in the morning, the kind of calm that follows a long night's work. I just poured my first cup of coffee when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was from Rachel, Vanessa's best friend. We weren't close, but the text was odd enough to grab my attention. "Happy anniversary, Logan. You deserve to know the truth." Attached was a photo. My hands nearly crushed the phone when I saw it. Vanessa, my wife of 8 years, in a dimly lit bar, locked in a kiss with another man. The caption read, "Dylan?" I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. Dylan? A guy half my age? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but the image was seared into my brain. I'd always prided myself on my composure, but I could feel it cracking under the weight of this revelation. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them from Vanessa. Not yet. So, I called Rachel. She picked up on the second ring, her voice tired but firm. "I couldn't keep lying for her anymore, Logan," Rachel said. "She's been seeing him for months. I didn't know how to tell you." Her words hit like a freight train. "Why now?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. Rachel sighed. "Because I'm sick of covering for her. She's been bragging about Dylan like you don't even exist." I couldn't watch it anymore. I swallowed hard, the bitterness clawing at my throat. "Did Vanessa know you were going to send this?" "No," she admitted, "but she'll figure it out soon enough." "I'm sorry, Logan." I hung up without replying. The kitchen felt colder, emptier. My eyes drifted to the anniversary card sitting on the counter, the one I'd picked up for Vanessa yesterday. The irony was almost laughable. Vanessa had always been charming, quick with a laugh and quicker with an excuse. I'd ignored the subtle changes, the extra time spent on her appearance, the late nights out with friends, the way she avoided my touch lately. It all made sense now. I set my coffee cup down, my grip tightening. I wasn't going to play the role of the clueless, betrayed husband. Vanessa wanted to lie? She wanted to sneak around? Fine. But I'd make sure the truth hit her like a ton of bricks. For now, I needed to stay calm, stay smart. This wasn't the time for confrontation. It was the time for planning. The house felt like a stranger's space as I paced the living room, replaying Rachel's words in my head. Vanessa was out, of course, probably with Dylan. My fists clenched involuntarily, but I forced myself to stay grounded. I couldn't let my anger make me sloppy. This needed precision. By mid-afternoon, I knew what had to be done. Vanessa wasn't going to tell me the truth, but I'd catch her in the act. It was only a matter of time before I'd piece together enough to expose her. The first step was figuring out where she'd be tonight. I scrolled through her social media, a curated gallery of our perfect life. It was all a lie, but I didn't expect to find much there. Then, like a gift from the devil himself, a notification popped up. Vanessa Lang checked in at Le Montaigne restaurant. Reservation at 8 p.m. Le Montaigne. Upscale, discreet, the kind of place people go to impress someone or hide something. I couldn't remember the last time Vanessa and I had been there together. It had to be Dylan. My jaw tightened as I clicked to reserve my own table. Under a pseudonym, of course. By 7:45, I was dressed and out the door, my heart pounding harder with every mile. When I arrived, the restaurant was as extravagant as I remembered. Polished floors, dim lighting, the hum of quiet conversation over clinking glasses. I gave the hostess my fake name, and she led me to a small table with a perfect view of the entrance. Vanessa walked in 10 minutes later. She was wearing that red dress, the one I used to love because it was for me. Tonight, it was for someone else. Dylan followed behind her, younger, smug, wearing a suit that screamed money he probably didn't earn. They didn't even look around, too absorbed in each other. Vanessa laughed as she leaned into him, her hand grazing his arm. I sat frozen, watching, my teeth grinding hard enough to crack. But I didn't move. Not yet. Their table was close enough that I could hear snippets of their conversation when the noise in the room dipped. Vanessa's tone was light, teasing, like she hadn't a care in the world. Dylan ordered an expensive wine, and they toasted to something I couldn't make out. For the next hour, I sat there, boiling inside but outwardly calm, studying every interaction. Vanessa's hand on Dylan's, the way she smiled at him. Smiles I hadn't seen in months. It was like watching a stranger in her skin. At 9:30, I paid my bill, the receipt still warm in my hand as I stepped outside. The night air hit me like a slap, but it wasn't enough to cool the fire building inside. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Tonight was just the beginning. I was back at Le Montagne the following evening, this time with a sharper plan and a colder resolve. My seat was near the center of the restaurant, tucked just enough out of sight that Vanessa and Dylan wouldn't notice me until I wanted them to. I'd chosen it carefully, ensuring the moment of confrontation would play out exactly as I envisioned. Vanessa arrived first, her red dress exchanged for a sleek black one that hugged her figure. Dylan followed close behind, his arm brushing hers as they were led to a table near the back. I didn't even try to eat. The sight of them made me lose any appetite I had left. They ordered wine, again, and Vanessa leaned in close, laughing at something Dylan said. He reached for her hand across the table, and she let him take it, her wedding ring glinting under the dim lights like a cruel joke. I let them get comfortable, watching every move. Dylan was cocky, throwing his head back with laughter, probably thinking he'd pulled off the ultimate steal. Vanessa was radiant, her face lit with the kind of joy she hadn't shown around me in months. It was disgusting. The waiter passed by, refilling their glasses, and I knew it was time. I stood, smoothing the front of my shirt, and strode across the room with the kind of purpose that turned heads. When I reached their table, Vanessa was mid-laugh, her wine glass halfway to her lips. "Happy anniversary, sweetheart," I said, my voice low but carrying enough weight to make her freeze. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of shock so complete it was almost satisfying. Dylan's eyes darted between us, confusion clouding his smug expression. "Logan?" Vanessa stammered, her voice a strained whisper. "Don't stop on my account." I gestured to the table, a cold smile curling my lips. I'd hate to interrupt such a romantic evening. She recovered quickly, too quickly. Her mouth twisted into a defiant smirk, and she sat back in her chair, crossing her arms. "What are you doing here?" "I think the better question is, what are you doing here?" I glanced at Dylan, who was trying, and failing, to look unfazed. "With him." Dylan opened his mouth, probably to spew some cocky retort, but Vanessa cut him off. "Oh, please, Logan. Don't make a scene. You're embarrassing yourself." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "Embarrassing myself? That's rich, coming from you. Sneaking around with a boy toy while still wearing my ring." Her smirk faltered, but she doubled down. "Maybe if you weren't so predictable, I wouldn't need to." The audacity of her words sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I straightened, giving them both a look of disgust. "Enjoy the wine, Vanessa. It's on me." I slapped a crisp $100 bill on the table, watching their stunned faces as I walked away. As I left the restaurant, the noise of the dining room swallowed their whispered argument. I didn't look back. The storm inside me was just beginning, and the night wasn't over yet. By the time I got home, my plan was already in motion. Vanessa and Dylan's little dinner escapade wasn't going to stay private for long. Rachel's incriminating photo was still in my phone, along with the fresh memories of their public display of affection at the restaurant. It was all I needed to strike the next blow. I sat down at the kitchen table, my laptop open and my fingers flying over the keys. Social media would be my battleground tonight. Vanessa had always curated a perfect image online. Pictures of us on vacations, her gushing about anniversaries, the occasional, "so lucky to have you" post that now felt like a slap in the face. I'd turned that facade into her downfall. I started by uploading Rachel's photo to a private group chat with family and close friends. No context, just the picture and a short caption, "Happy anniversary to me." Guess the surprise wasn't for me after all. The responses came quickly, shocked messages, questions, anger. Vanessa's sister called me almost immediately, her voice a mix of outrage and disbelief. I let her vent, confirming what she already suspected. The photo spoke louder than words. Then I moved to a wider audience. Using an anonymous account, I uploaded the photo to a local gossip forum with just enough details to make it clear who Vanessa and Dylan were without naming them outright. The post caught fire, the comments rolling in faster than I could read them. By the time Vanessa came home, the fallout was already spreading. She slammed the door, her heels clicking angrily across the floor as she stormed into the living room. "What the hell is this, Logan?" she shouted, waving her phone at me. I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Looks like the truth is finally catching up to you." Her face twisted into a mix of fury and desperation. "You had no right to post that picture. Do you know how humiliating this is?" "Humiliating for you?" I stood, my voice rising. "What about me? Or did you think sneaking around with Dylan wouldn't come back to bite you?" She scoffed, crossing her arms. "This isn't what you think. Dylan and I don't." I cut her off, stepping closer. "Don't even try to spin this, Vanessa. I saw you at the restaurant. I've seen the texts, the photos. You don't get to lie your way out of this." For the first time, she faltered. Her mouth opened, then closed, her confidence slipping. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said weakly. I let out a bitter laugh. "Am I? Because it seems to me you've been playing house with him for months. Were you planning on telling me, or just hoping I'd be too stupid to notice?" Her silence said it all. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her standing there. My phone buzzed with notifications all night. Messages from friends and family, some offering support, others demanding explanations. Dylan, meanwhile, was radio silent. Coward. By the next morning, the damage was undeniable. Vanessa's carefully crafted social circle was in shambles, and Dylan's name was already being whispered around town. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start. The morning light barely softened the house's tension. Vanessa had slept on the couch, her phone buzzing every few minutes with calls and messages. She was trying to contain the mess, but there was no undoing what I'd set in motion. Her lies were out, and the fallout had only just begun. By mid-morning, I'd made my decision. I went upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, and began packing her belongings. Every dress, every piece of jewelry, all the little tokens of a life we once shared. I stuffed them into the bag without a second thought. When I came back downstairs, Vanessa was sitting in the kitchen, staring at her coffee like it might hold the answers to her problems. She looked up as I dropped the suitcase at her feet. "What's this?" she asked, her voice already defensive. "It's your stuff," I said flatly. "You're not staying here anymore." Her jaw tightened. "You don't get to just kick me out, Logan. This is my house too." "Not anymore," I replied, my tone as cold as the air between us. "You lost that right when you decided to play house with Dylan." Her expression shifted, a flicker of desperation breaking through her anger. "Logan, please. Let's just talk about this. I made a mistake, but we can fix it." "We can." "Fix it?" I interrupted, stepping closer. "You think this is something we can fix? You lied to me, humiliated me, and for what? Some cheap fling with a kid who probably can't even spell commitment." She flinched, but I didn't stop. "This marriage is over, Vanessa. I'm done being the fool while you play your little games." Her face hardened again, and she rose to her feet, crossing her arms. "You think you're so righteous, don't you? Like you're the victim here. Maybe if you hadn't been so boring, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." That did it. My composure snapped, and I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing through the kitchen. "Don't you dare try to blame this on me. You made your choices, Vanessa. Now you get to live with them." She stared at me, defiant but silent, as I stepped back and pointed to the door. "Take your suitcase and leave. If you don't, I'll call the cops and have you escorted out." For a moment, I thought she might fight back, but then she grabbed the suitcase and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I watched through the window as she threw the bag into her car and sped off, her tires screeching on the pavement. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield after the smoke cleared, scarred, but finally at peace. Vanessa was gone, and with her, the lies and betrayal that had poisoned everything. But there was still work to do. This wasn't over yet. The next morning, I was up before dawn, my mind already racing. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty, like the hollow shell of a life I no longer recognized. Vanessa hadn't come back after I threw her out, and honestly, I didn't care where she went. She'd made her choice, and now, I was making mine. By the time the courthouse opened, I was standing outside with the paperwork in hand. Filing for divorce wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about reclaiming my life. I wanted her out, not just of my house, but of my existence. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more pretending. The clerk barely looked at me as she took the papers, stamping them with a dull thud that felt oddly final. I walked out with a copy of the filing, folded it neatly, and tucked it into my jacket. It was official now. The end was in motion. Vanessa called me later that afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Logan," she began, her voice soft, almost pleading. "Can we just talk? Please." "Talk?" I said, my voice cold. "About what, Vanessa? How you lied to me? How you humiliated me? Or how you threw away everything we built for a fling with some idiot who doesn't even care about you?" She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. "I made a mistake," she said finally. "I was bored, Logan. You were so distant. I didn't mean for it to happen this way." I laughed bitterly. "Bored? That's your excuse? You weren't bored when you were sneaking around, lying to my face, were you? Don't insult me, Vanessa. I still love you," she said quickly, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can fix this. I'll stop seeing Dylan. I'll do whatever it takes." "No," I interrupted. "You don't get to come back now. You made your choice, Vanessa, and now you get to live with the consequences." She tried to argue, but I hung up, cutting her off mid-sentence. My hand tightened around the phone, but I forced myself to let it go. She wasn't worth my anger anymore. She wasn't worth anything. That night, the fallout spread further. Dylan had started pulling away from Vanessa, too, probably scared of the attention their affair was getting. Word had reached his parents, and from what I'd heard, his mother, Diane, wasn't taking it well. Vanessa was losing everything, and it was no less than she deserved. I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, staring out at the quiet street. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the one I was left with. And for the first time, I was okay with that. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple snapped it up within a week of listing, eager to start their own life in a place that had become a battlefield for mine. Packing up felt cathartic. Every box I taped shut was like sealing away the remnants of Vanessa's lies. I moved into a modest apartment across town, a place with clean walls and no memories to haunt me. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that was all I needed. I spent the first night in silence, sitting on the balcony with a bottle of bourbon, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. It was the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Vanessa, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. Mutual friends, those who hadn't already cut ties with her, told me she was struggling to keep up appearances. Dylan had abandoned her completely, and word around town was that even his family had turned against her. She was alone, as she deserved to be. The divorce finalized within a few months. Clean, efficient, and merciless. I'd made sure the paperwork detailed everything. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. She didn't even try to contest it, knowing she didn't have a leg to stand on. When the judge signed the papers, it felt like the final weight lifting off my shoulders. One afternoon, Rachel stopped by my apartment unannounced. I hadn't seen her since the fallout, but she looked different, lighter, freer. She handed me a bottle of wine and sat across from me, her eyes searching mine. "I'm sorry, Logan," she said, "for not telling you sooner. I should have said something the moment I found out about Vanessa and Dylan." I shrugged, pouring us both a glass. "You did what you thought was right at the time. I'm not holding it against you." She smiled faintly, lifting her glass. "To new beginnings?" "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. Life moved on, slowly but steadily. I threw myself into work, started going to the gym again, even picked up old hobbies I'd forgotten about. Each day felt like a step forward, away from the wreckage Vanessa had left behind. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Vanessa, Dylan, the betrayal. It was all just a chapter in my life, a lesson learned. I was stronger now, smarter, and more self-assured than I'd ever been. The road ahead was mine to walk, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was headed in the right direction. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.